5 receivers slipping down the ranks. Today on Fantasy OT, we're going to break down why. Starting off at number 5, Deshaun Watson's former teammate and favorite target at Clemson, Mike Williams. Williams has become known for his spectacular deep grabs at the NFL level. He's also become just as infamous for his injury history. Unfortunately for Williams, we've gotten used to him either missing time or playing at far less than 100%. A 50-50 ball specialist who profiles as a deep threat, Williams has shown big play potential time and time again. He also benefits from having one of the best quarterbacks in the league throwing him the ball in Justin Herbert. Also benefiting him is the fact that he has Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler to take away attention from him. Also Gerald Everett and Josh Palmer and a bunch of other peripheral targets that are pretty good. But one of the bigger concerns for me this year is the fact that the Chargers drafted a receiver in the first round in Quinton Johnston. It could be argued that both Allen and Williams are getting up there in age, and Allen has had an injury history in his own right, so maybe it's insurance for him as well. But the reality is, Williams has always struggled to finish the season, and I think this year is going to be no different. It's always very enticing to draft someone that's one of the league leaders in air yards, but it doesn't seem to translate enough, and I think you could do a lot better in the 7th round. Up next at number 4, the man who's made a career off of short passes on shallow drag routes, Deontay Johnson. Johnson has really benefited from having great durability and also a humongous target share throughout his career, averaging about 138 targets per year. Insane. And I think this is the year that unfortunately he doesn't hit that mark. The Steelers signed Allen Robinson this offseason. George Pickens is ready to take a leap this year, in my opinion, and they still have Pat Freiermuth. So I could totally see Johnson coming back down to earth. Not to mention, last year he did not score a touchdown. And I think one of the bigger knocks on Johnson is that he always leaves meat on the bone. Every year he seems to be one of the league leaders in drop passes. Even in 2020, he led the league with a whopping 16. And while he has improved in subsequent seasons, he hasn't made enough strides in other areas to compensate for that. He's still a short yardage specialist. He still doesn't have the ability to take the top off consistently. And I think this year is going to be much of the same. For some reason, the Steelers are super patient with him, even though sometimes cameras will show Mike Tomlin visibly frustrated at his star receiver. I think this is the year where the patience runs too thin. And I can see the Steelers scheming up other receivers to see what they can do. Don't get me wrong, Johnson is plenty talented, but unfortunately, I just don't think he's worth the headache, especially if he ends up being a low-end WR3. Obviously, he has more value in PPR leagues given his insane target share, so you'll probably prop up his value that way, and he probably will have some positive regression in the touchdown area, but I don't think it's enough to warrant spending a 9th round pick. Up at number 3, the former Alabama Crimson Tide, Jerry Jeudy. And speaking of drop passes, he hasn't been much better, dropping 14 of them his rookie season, which, ironically enough, was the year that Johnson led the league. Judy's been a mixed bag to say the least. His rookie season, he flashed his potential, taking short passes to the house, running great routes, which is what he became known for at Alabama and when he got drafted, basically why he got drafted, but he just never seemed to be consistent enough. Then came his sophomore season where he got hit with a dreaded high ankle sprain, and he really wasn't quite himself when he came back. And then his 3rd year, which was last year, was kind of a mixture of the two. He started off slow, really turned things on, even won AFC Offensive Player of the Week once, but he just never seems to put together a full season. Not to mention, he has Russell Wilson throwing him the ball, who I think will rebound from last year somewhat, but not to the degree that people are expecting. And let's not forget, he also has to face more competition for targets now. Tim Patrick is now healthy. They still have Cortland Sutton, and Greg Dulcich is ascending. I can see Jeudy falling in the pecking order or having on and off games far too often to warrant spending a 6th round pick on. Coming up at number 2, the undrafted free agent out of Minnesota State, Adam Thielen. Entering his 10th season, he'll be 33 years old, which to me spells trouble. He's listed as Carolina's number 1 receiver, and I have serious doubts that he'll be able to live up to that title. They have a much younger receiver in Jonathan Mingo. They signed DJ Chark, and they also signed Miles Sanders. I can see him kind of falling down the pecking order rather quickly and struggling to repeat the success that he's had in the past. And even that success has been largely dependent on touchdowns. Over the last 4 years, he's averaged 9 touchdowns per year, which you might be thinking, that's not so bad. That's actually pretty good. And while it is, his peripheral stats leave much to be desired. Over that time span, he's never cracked 75 receptions, he's never gone over 1,000 yards, and his average yards per catch has just consistently trended downward, which tells me he's losing the ability to get separation, which is a really big deal for an older receiver. I could see him actually being, at best, a high-end WR3, if not a mid WR3, if he isn't able to replicate his touchdown numbers. In truth, he's always been better suited to be the second receiver on a team. If we remember, he had his most success when he was next to Stephon Diggs, most recently Justin Jefferson, and I just don't see him having success as a team's leading receiver. Not to mention, he has a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young throwing him the ball, who will undoubtedly have some struggles. So in my opinion, he's really just not worth the headache in the 10th round. Maybe in standard leagues if you're chasing that same touchdown upside he's had, but in half and full PPR leagues, that's just a little too much to overcome. Coming in at number 1, the man I like to call the human joystick. I don't know about you, but I completely fell in love with Toney after his 10-catch, 189-yard performance against the Cowboys in Week 5 during the 2021 season. I mean, I liked it so much I even drafted him the following year, which proved to be a mistake. Toney was a first-round pick out of Florida, and he's flashed his pedigree time and time again, but unfortunately, he's just never on the field for a number of reasons. Obviously, we know about his injury history, but he's also bumped heads with coaches in the past too. He only survived a year and a half in New York before being traded to the Chiefs, which worked out well for both parties, especially Toney, given that he had such a big impact in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and won his first Super Bowl. But I think the expectations this year are just too lofty for him. I think the Chiefs are expecting way too much out of him. They let Juju Smith-Schuster walk, they let Mecole Hardman walk, and I think they're just banking on that performance he had in the Super Bowl. But unfortunately for them and him, he's already started to get bit by the injury bug. This week during practice, he tweaked his knee and has already underwent surgery to repair the cartilage in that knee, putting his Week 1 status in doubt, which makes me nervous for him throughout the season. We've all seen him miss extensive time despite conflicting practice reports, and I just don't think it's worth the headache, even in the 9th round. That does it for me in Fantasy OT. I'd love to hear about which receivers you think are slipping down the ranks in the comments below.